Ferrini reads A Bedtime Story, Part 3. Between San Jose and the turnoff to Monterey, 101 rolls gracefully through the rich farming foothills of the Santa Cruz Mountains. The Hells Angels, riding two abreast in each lane, seemed out of place in little towns like Coyote and Gilroy. People ran out of taverns and dry goods stores to stare at these fabled big city Huns. Local cops waited nervously at intersections, hoping the angels would pass quietly and not cause trouble. It was almost as if some far-ranging band of Viet Cong guerrillas had appeared, trotting fast in a tight formation down the middle of Main Street, bound for some bloody rendezvous that nobody in town even cared to know about, as long as the dirty buggers kept moving. The angels try to avoid trouble on the road. Even a minor arrest in a country town at the start of a holiday weekend can mean 3 days in jail, missing the party, and a maximum fine when they finally come to court. They know, too, that in addition to the original charge, usually a traffic violation or disorderly conduct, they will probably be accused of resisting arrest, which can mean 30 days, a jail haircut, and another fine of $150 or so. Now, after many a painful lesson, they approach small towns the same way a traveling salesman from Chicago approaches a known speed trap in Alabama. The idea, after all, is to reach the destination, not to lock horns with hayseed cops along the way. The destination this time was a big tavern called Nick's, a noisy place on a main drag called Del Monte, near Cannery Row in downtown Monterey. We went right through the middle of town, recalls Terry, through the traffic and everything. Most of the guys knew Nick's, but not me because I was in jail the other time. We didn't make it till about 3 because we had to wait in a gas station on 101 for some of the guys running late. By the time we got there, I guess we had about 40 or 50 bikes. Purdue was already in with about 75, and people kept coming all night. By the next morning, there were about 300 from all over. The stated purpose of the gathering was the collection of funds to send the body of a former angel back to his mother in North Carolina. Kenneth Country Beamer, a vice president of the San Bernardino chapter, had been snuffed by a truck a few days earlier in a desert hamlet called Jacumba near San Diego. Country had died in the best outlaw tradition, homeless, stone broke, and owning nothing in this world but the clothes on his back and a big bright Harley. As the others saw it, the least they could do was send his remains back to the Carolinas, to whatever family or memory of a home might be there. It was the best thing to do, Terry said. The recent demise of a buddy lent the '64 affair a tone of solemnity that not even the police could scoff at. It was the sort of gesture the cops find irresistible. Final honors for a fallen comrade, with a collection for the mother, and a bit of the uniformed pageantry to make the show real. In deference to all this, the Monterey police had let it be known that they would receive the angels in a spirit of armed truce. It was the first time in years that the outlaws had been faced with even a semblance of civic hospitality, and it turned out to be the last. For when the sun came up on that bright Pacific Saturday, the infamous Monterey rape was less than 24 hours away from making nationwide headlines. The Hells Angels would soon be known and feared throughout the land. Their blood, booze, and semen-flecked image would be familiar to readers of the New York Times, Newsweek, The Nation, Time, True, Esquire, and the Saturday Evening Post. Within 6 months, small towns from coast to coast would be arming themselves at the slightest rumor of a Hells Angels invasion. All 3 major television networks would be seeking them out with cameras, and they would be denounced in the U.S. Senate by George Murphy, the former tap dancer. Weird as it seems, as this gang of costume hoodlums converged on Monterey that morning, they were on the verge of making it big, as the showbiz people say, and they would owe most of their success to a curious rape mania that rides on the shoulder of American journalism, like some jeering, masturbating raven. Nothing grabs an editor's eye like a good rape. We really blew their minds this time, as one of the angels explained it. According to the newspapers, at least 20 of these dirty hopheads snatched 2 teenage girls, aged 14 and 15, away from their terrified dates and carried them off to the sand dunes to be repeatedly assaulted. Repeatedly assaulted, aged 14 and 15, stinking, hairy thugs. A deputy sheriff, summoned by one of the erstwhile dates, said he arrived at the beach and saw a huge bonfire surrounded by cyclists of both sexes. Then, the 2 sobbing, near-hysterical girls staggered out of the darkness, begging for help. One was completely nude, and the other had on only a torn sweater. Here, sweet Jesus was an image flat guaranteed to boil the public blood and foam the brain of every man with female flesh for kin. 2 innocent young girls, American citizens, carried off to the dunes and ravaged like Arab whores. One of the dates told police they tried to rescue the girls but couldn't reach them in the mob scene that erupted once the victims were stripped of their clothing. Out there in the sand, in the blue moonlight, in a circle of leering hoodlums, they were penetrated again and again. The next morning, Terry the Tramp was one of 4 angels arrested for forcible rape, which carries a penalty of 1 to 50 years in the penitentiary. He denied all knowledge of the crime, as did Mother Miles, Moldy Marvin, and Crazy Cross. But several hours later, with bond set at a lowly $1,100 each, they were lodged in the Monterey County Jail in Salinas, out there in Steinbeck country, the hot lettuce valley, owned in the main by smart second-generation hillbillies who got out of Appalachia while the getting was good, and who now pay other, less smart hillbillies to supervise the work of Mexican braceros, whose native natural fitness for stoop labor has been explained by the ubiquitous Senator Murphy. They're built low to the ground, he said, so it's easier for them to stoop. Indeed. And since Senator Murphy has also called the Hells Angels the lowest form of animals, it presumably follows that they are better constructed for the mindless rape of any prostrate woman they might come across as they scurry about from one place to another with their dorks carried low like water wands, which is not far from the truth, but for different reasons than California's ex-Lightfoot senator might have us believe. Nobody knew, of course, as they gathered that Saturday at Nick's, that the angels were about to make a publicity breakthrough by means of rape on the scale of the Beatles or Bob Dylan. At dusk, with an orange sun falling fast into the ocean, just a mile or so away, the main event of the evening was so wholly unplanned that the principal characters, or victims, attracted little attention in the noisy crowd that jammed Nick's barroom and spilled out to the darkening street. Terry says he noticed the girls and their dates only as part of the overall scene. The main reason I remember them is I wondered what that white pregnant girl was doing with a bunch of suede dudes. But I figured it was her business, and I wasn't hurting for pussy anyway. I had my old lady with me. We're separated now, but then we were doing okay, and she wouldn't have none of me hustling anything else while she was around. Besides, hell, when you're seeing old friends you haven't seen in a year or two, you don't have time to pay much attention to strangers. The only thing Terry and all the other angels agree on in relation to the victim's first appearance is that they sure as hell didn't look no. Pages 15 and 16 are going to be skipped. When we got back to the beach, well, maybe I should stop here. End of part 3.